Hello everyone, thanks so much for joining us today. We're going to be talking through a step-by-step guide to Amazon bookkeeping when you're using QuickBooks Online. We'll have a question and answer session at the end, so please feel free to drop your questions in chat as we go along. I'm really delighted to introduce Danielle and Emily from Aprio. They bring deep expertise in e-commerce bookkeeping and have extensive experience supporting businesses with both Amazon Seller Central and QuickBooks Online. My name is Elspeth. I am UK Go-to-Market Manager at A2X, but I'm also a bookkeeper. And I'm excited to hear what Danielle and Emily are going to say today on this topic. So for now, I'm going to hand it over to Danielle to tell us a little bit about herself, and then Emily will follow up after that.
Great, thank you, Elspeth. I'm Danielle Hammac. I'm the accounting manager at Aprio Advisory Group, where I lead the Managed Services e-commerce technology pod. My team works with a diverse range of e-commerce clients, from small resellers to large international consumer products, goods, and manufacturing companies. Our role is to serve as a trusted advisor, overseeing steady state monthly accounting operations and providing in-depth financial analysis for our clients, so we can ensure they receive timely, accurate, and meaningful financial reports so that they can spend their time focusing on growing their business. And I'm with Emily today.
Yeah, thanks, Danielle.
Sure.
Happy to jump in, happy to be here this afternoon as well. Just an introduction on my side, Emily Cheshire from Aprio. I'm a director within our managed service practice, leading all of the technology group, which is inclusive of e-commerce. I've actually been working with e-commerce companies for over a decade now, having also had a e-commerce firm as well back in the UK. And now here at Aprio, working very closely with Danielle, supporting all of our e-commerce clients for back-end accounting services, including everything from month-end close all the way up to CFO services. And just wanted to give a little bit about Aprio as well. We're a top 25 CPA-led advisory firm based out of the US, 26 offices coast to coast. And we focus on accounting, tax, audit, and advisory services. Our kind of specialty is really helping clients grow, really specializing in sort of the startup to what's next. So, for example, at the kind of earlier startup stages, really there to help you with kind of compliance, sales tax issues, taxation issues, accounting. And then as you scale later and also hopefully expand globally potentially as well, we can help with transfer pricing, international tax planning. And then also if you're looking to kind of exit your company as well, we can kind of support you there.
Brilliant. All right, a quick run through the agenda. We're going to talk about 3 main points, and then we're going to do our question and answer session at the end. The first point we're going to talk about is why accurate Amazon bookkeeping is key to profitability. The second is what makes Amazon bookkeeping so complicated. And then the third is best practice month-end Amazon bookkeeping process that you can take away with you and replicate in your own processes. And then at the end, we'll have a few questions and answers that people have raised throughout the webinar. We've also got a checklist that will be in the chat. You can download it and you should get it by email after the session as well. This again just outlines that checklist. You can use it for your own practice and make use of it however it works with your own internal processes. So to address the first question on the agenda, Emily, maybe you can kick things off. I think we can just talk a little bit about why accurate Amazon bookkeeping is so important.
Yeah, thanks, Elspeth. Happy to. Well, I'll start with accounting for e-commerce companies in general is very complicated compared to a lot of other kind of more traditional industries. And then you throw in selling on Amazon, and then all of a sudden it's even more complex. Now, specifically when you're looking at Amazon, the kind of key areas of Amazon that make things so complex is that, well, firstly, all of the payouts are received net. And again, that's very similar to if you even had your own online store. Again, they're going to be paid out net of fees. The issue with Amazon is the volume of fees. I'm sure everyone here, if you're watching this, is selling on Amazon. and you will see that your sales number is quite large at the top. And then there's probably 10 to 20 different fees. Some of them, which if you're new to selling on Amazon, it's really hard to even know what it is. And then you get your net payout at the bottom, which is a lot smaller than the revenue at the top. So if you were to go and straight away include that as sales, you are going to be massively understating your sales. And also in your QuickBooks Online system, really not tracking any of those costs either. So that's kind of the primary kind of complexity, particularly around the accounting on Amazon. But then take a step back. And one of the beauties that Amazon offers sellers is that you can attract a global audience straight away. You don't need to go and set up a different website in different countries. The issue with that is all of a sudden you find that you've got taxation complexity, multi-currency complexity. You may have inventory being held in different countries via Amazon FBA as well. So all of this really just kind of adds to the complexity when you're trying to take that data and the payouts you receive from Amazon and then making sure it transitions into your accounting system. And it's important to track all of those pieces properly, not only for tax and kind of paying corporation tax based on the jurisdiction you're in, but also for business decisions. If you're not tracking it properly, you're not tracking, all your revenue, all your costs by each market, it can be really difficult to even get a pulse on how you're performing, what your margins are, what your better markets are. So that's why it's so important to make sure that you can kind of get that data correctly into your accounting system. Danielle on our team here, she works with a huge amount of clients that sell on Amazon. And Danielle, I know you've got some really good examples of why it's so important to make sure it's done properly.
Yeah, actually, we have a great example of some of the points you just mentioned, Emily. So we're currently working with a client that came to Aprio after experiencing a lot of challenges and confusion booking their Amazon sales and expenses because they were just relying on that payout report and the sales deposit. So what they believed were net deductions all related to FBA fees, but really it was, a long list of different fees that were actually being deducted. One of those being an actual Amazon advertising fee. And so after we onboarded them and set them up with AdaX, we were able to show that about 80% of the deductions that they initially thought were just straight FBA fees were actually Amazon marketing costs. So of course that had a significant impact on their marketing budget. And so once we got a clear financial picture for them, they were able to really review the active campaigns and make some better data-driven decisions, ultimately optimizing the business and really improving their profitability. And then, so what makes Amazon bookkeeping so complicated? Emily hit the nail right on the head on a lot of the issues because the first one we'll talk about here, payout periods. Unlike other platforms that have straightforward daily, weekly sales records and payout schedules, Amazon operates on a bi-weekly payout schedule. So that means that the sales might not be paid out for weeks, and those payouts could stretch across multiple accounting periods. So for example, if you made a sale today in late September, you wouldn't receive that actual cash from the sale until the next accounting period, October, which has a great impact on your books. And then with the level of volume that Amazon sellers can have, tracking exactly what was earned versus what was paid, can quickly become kind of overwhelming without some careful, accrual accounting. And then let's see, so the next one, the various Amazon fees, like Emily mentioned too, there's a long list of fees and deductions that hold back from payouts. Fees for referrals, fulfillment, storage, advertising, refunds, like the list just goes on. And can get really complex quickly because these fees can change with each payout and they're not always itemized separately. They're just, a one lump deduction from your payout. So of course the money hitting your bank doesn't necessarily match your total sales, which makes it challenging to track, your true profitability and selling expenses without diving into a lot of Amazon data. And the other fees, in addition to the fees, Amazon also holds back a portion of your sales in what they call an Amazon reserve. And that's to cover potential returns or chargebacks. So that means that even though you've made a sale, you might not see the full amount in that payout until Amazon releases those funds, which could be 1 to 2 months later. So monitoring these pending balances is really essential to maintain your accurate records of your cash flow and how much of that revenue you actually have available to use.
All right. Happy to, I can jump in on the other two here. So obviously kind of touched on earlier as well, having, you know, access to Amazon means you can access a global marketplace almost instantly. That, as far as I'm concerned, is one of the biggest positives of selling on Amazon, but it adds a lot of complexity. So one of those being, firstly, multi-currency. So the accounting for that can be challenging. You need to make sure that you've got, well, first of all, just from a business operational point, you're able to actually even accept the multi-currency payouts. But also you need to be able to do all the accounting within multi-currency. So when you think about how to have QuickBooks Online kind of set up, you're going to want to make sure that you've got, well, first of all, sales accounts, cost of goods sold accounts, or the expense accounts set up by each jurisdiction. So US, Canada, UK, Germany, EU, however it's split within Amazon. So you can track it, but also you're able to track it in the local currency as well. Secondly, sales tax. So sales tax becomes incredibly complex. For a start, you know, you've got different countries with different thresholds for even having to register for sales tax. So in the UK, I believe it's currently at 90K. In the US, for example, every single state is different. So if you're selling across all the states, you could find that you have to file sales tax in up to 50 states, as well as all the registration piece as well. Now, the good thing is that Amazon does collect and remit on your behalf the sales tax piece. The issue can be that if you are selling on Amazon in addition to potentially having your own online store, you've then got to manage just the complexity there in terms of kind of Amazon filing, yourself filing as well. So it's one of those where you're going to need to have a really kind of broad understanding of global taxation laws and also work with a CPA potentially globally as well, just to make sure that you're kind of compliant on that side of things. And also the FBA versus non-FBA models. So FBA, fulfillment by Amazon, it's a really popular model. It means that Amazon is storing and then also picking and packing any of your units that you're selling. That adds another accounting complexity because you've got Amazon managing the inventory piece for you. So you need to make sure when you're doing the accounting at the end of the month that you're also adjusting your inventory on the balance sheet to reflect the units that are held. Also taking into consideration any returns that can potentially be resold, or also any like damaged or lost units. The additional piece there is if you're again having non-FBA model as well, sometimes people have one or the other, or sometimes both. You've also got to make sure that you're accounting for anything either held in your own warehouses or another kind of fulfillment place as well.
Thanks, Emily. That's brilliant. So I think we can say the long and short of it is that if you're not bookkeeping accurately for Amazon, you do have limited insight into the profitability and performance of the business. And also you're potentially going to run into issues with your tax compliance in the different areas where you're required to remit tax. As Emily and Danielle have explained really well, what you see hitting the bank account is so different from the transactions that actually make up that net amount that hits the bank account in QuickBooks. It can be tempting for many of, like we see many of our customers, it's really tempting to skim over the complexity. They're tempted to reconcile it to sales, but we know that when that happens, we're missing out on so much information on the P&L and balance sheet. And you know, when you break it down, so this is a good example here on the left-hand side, you can see what's hit the bank account. But when you actually break it down, you can see that's made up of sales, shipping, fees, refunds, tax collected, and as Danielle and Emily mentioned, potentially reserve and pending balances as well when it's Amazon. So yeah, as we've spoken about, some people ignore it, some people create best guess entries, and then the more conscientious spend hours trying to do it manually, and some of you may have done that yourselves, trying to reconcile it all in spreadsheets. With A2X, we try and take away that headache from you, and we try and give you accurate and automated e-commerce accounting data straight into your accounting system. And we can see over here on the right is a typical set of Amazon data with all kinds of different transactions going on. We take that uncategorized sales, fees, refunds, taxes, all of that data from Amazon, and then we push it through to your accounting system in accurate summaries, either in invoices or, in the case of QuickBooks, it's a journal that matches back the amount that hit the bank. So we're always going for that green click moment on the bank feed. The amount that hit the bank matches the summary that we've given you that breaks down all of the transactions that made up that period. And again, the goal at the end is just increased visibility, accurate P&Ls, accurate balance sheets that you can trust to just advise internally as a business, to know where you should be going and what decisions you should be making, because you have really good numbers that you can rely on. So how do we get there? That's all part of a process that happens. And Danielle and Emily are really experts at that process. And I'm going to hand over them now, and they're going to just walk us through what they would do on a typical month then to close out an Amazon period.
Yeah, so as you said, Elizabeth, having A to X involved really kind of makes this a really easy process. So if you're not using A to X and you're trying to dig through some manual reportings, you're going to need, your Amazon seller reports, the inventory reports, Amazon Pay reports. The list just goes on and on. But with A to X, you'll just need, you can switch to the next slide there, please. You'll just need your bank statements and transactions, and hopefully you already have these syncing over into your QuickBooks. Access to Seller Central in case you need to kind of refer back to any transactions or fees, and then visibility into the pending pay from Amazon Pay, which we'll talk about in a minute, and then your product cost catalog for COGS if you're not using A to X, which we'll talk about in a minute too. So you can skip one over. Yep. So the first thing you need to do is just make sure that A to X is set up correctly. So like I mentioned before, Amazon has a long list of potential fees, and new fees can hit your payouts from month to month. So any new fees or accounts that have been set up in QuickBooks will need to be mapped before you can sync that journal entries over to QuickBooks from A to X. A to X makes this super easy, and you can see from the screen here, anything that's missing a mapping will be highlighted for you. So it's pretty obvious on what you'll need to make your updates. So once all your updates are done, you can go ahead. Yep, thank you. You'll just want to verify all of your settlements have been posted to QuickBooks. And again, A to X makes this super clear, and you can now kind of filter on to see any settlements that weren't sent to QBO. So once you have this screen all cleaned up, you can go back over into your QuickBooks and just make sure everything is synced and matched. Just the next one, please, Elizabeth. So there's our green check mark from A to X syncing over a Shopify payment. We'll see that, the payouts match the bank deposit, and the journal entry is already there ready to be accepted. And then, of course, after all your transactions are accepted, you'll just reconcile your bank account as usual. Okay, let's see. So for Amazon sellers operating in international marketplaces, Emily mentioned, the foreign currency can kind of get really complicated. So we want to make sure your QuickBooks is set up to accept those foreign exchange rates. X makes this real simple because when you sell on an international marketplace, your sales will be recorded in that local currency, whether it's euros, pounds, yen, etc. And your payouts will be sent to you in your home currency after conversion. So the payout Amazon sends to you is often different from the actual sales amount in foreign currency for exchange rates, foreign transaction fees. So to handle this, A to X will pull in all your foreign sales fees and refunds as a journal entry in the foreign currency and send that to QuickBooks. Once the journal entry is created, QuickBooks will then calculate the exchange rate for you so that it matches the payout that you receive in your bank from your home currency. So you can see on our screen here, we had a Canadian sale that was synced over to QuickBooks, and QuickBooks did the conversion from Canadian dollars to US dollars, which is what this bank account is in. So it's another easy green check match. and you're on your way. And then I think Emily, you're going to touch on the global sales reconciliation.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, great.
So in terms of kind of the global sales reconciliation, essentially kind of we touched on before, any sales tax that's collected. So let's say, for example, you're a US seller, you're selling in a UK market as well. The Amazon will collect automatically your VAT. And then also remit that. So again, it goes back to kind of the categorization and how everything's set up at the beginning and mapped in A2X. You're going to want to make sure that you have a liability account, first of all, set up in QuickBooks Online for, in this example, UK VAT. So that when you are utilizing A2X to kind of make sure everything maps in really nicely, it will automatically show any of the sales tax that's being collected by Amazon. So let's say Amazon held back £1,000 that it needed to process as part of the VAT return. When you see that and when it comes through in terms of the Amazon payout and kind of moving into QuickBooks, it should then flow through into that VAT account on your balance sheet, showing that in this example you owe like £1,000. Now, once that is remitted, again, we will see that that's paid out, and again, it should cover off. So you'll be able to kind of track it all the way through. And this is really important as well, again, in terms of the mapping, making sure you've got an individual account set up. Yes, Amazon is collecting it and remitting it on your behalf, but overall, as the company, you're still liable for any kind of taxation globally. So it's something that you want to track, make sure that you've got good records on. And if you're a larger e-commerce company as well, just making sure that you've got somebody that kind of specializes and focuses on the sales tax area, because we see that's definitely one of the more complex areas for e-commerce sellers.
Okay, so moving back to inventory now. So if you're using FBA, you will need some Amazon Seller Central reports in your cost sheet, and you'll do some simple math, which I have shown on the screenshot there, to tie back to your QBO balance sheet. If it doesn't match, what you'll want to do is create an adjusting entry, and you want to look for things like returns, shrinkage, any items that were lost or returned for damage that can't be resold, because all of those factors can really affect your overall inventory evaluation. If you're not using an FBA, you'll follow your typical inventory count and valuation process. And then if you're using a combination of the two, you'll merge all of your processes together to get that ending balance on your inventory on your balance sheet. And then of course there's other transactions for landed costs, shipping, packaging. You want to make sure all of those are hitting your profit and loss statement through COGS throughout the month. And once you have all of that and all of your other month-end closing entries completed, you're ready to do your final review. And Emily has some great best practices for that.
Yeah, I'll say when you're going through kind of making sure everything ties out, it's really easy to being so laser focused on the details. A common area that we see is that people don't take a step back. So I always say, before you even go through and dig into more of those details, check back, do a variance analysis, see if it looks consistent month over month. I mean, this time of year, you should start to see kind of sales, especially on Amazon, ramping up. You've got Black Friday deals coming up, and then you've got kind of all the holiday seasonal sales coming up as well. Now, all of a sudden, if your revenue, for example, is considerably lower, that's going to be a big red flag for you to kind of look into what's going on there. Now, first of all, in terms of best practices when looking at the income statement, it really goes back to, well, firstly, making sure that your reporting set up correctly in QuickBooks Online, making sure you've got the right accounts in the right categories. So in terms of the income, always best practices on this side is, again, making sure that you've got a chart of account code in income for each jurisdiction you're selling in. And what that does is that you can then utilize that and reconcile that back to the reports from A2X and then back as well into the Amazon Sellers Central if that's what you're looking to do. So by doing that and having that breakout, you can then very quickly do a double check, making sure that, again, you've got the gross sales, not net receipts, because within the income statement, that's definitely the most common error that we see come through. And then in terms of cost of goods sold, this is where we would typically expect to see the majority of all of those giant lists of Amazon expenses that you're going to see, because it's all related to selling your units. So all the FP&A costs, any losses, any the actual cost of goods sold, so the cost of the unit being manufactured, the cost of the unit being shipped in, as well as kind of Amazon warehouse fees, for example. So everything related to selling that product, buying that product should be included in here. The biggest area within cost of goods sold to review, it's really around the inventory piece. So that tends to be another area of complexity. And typically we make sure that as long as your inventory on the balance sheet is reconciling to the report, for example, at Amazon, the units that are held in the warehouse, any movement between last month and the current month is going to have to go through cost of goods sold. So in theory, that should be the cost of all of the units you've sold in that month. But again, if you've got some breakages, some loss or refunds, that's also going to flow out through cost of goods sold. The other thing, again, just do a quick step back and check on the profit and loss statement as a whole. Obviously, you're just going to want to also make sure that you're reconciling other typical business expenses, wages and salaries, insurance, professional fees, for example. And then moving over to the balance sheet side, really the movements here, it's to do with areas such as the reserve that Danielle mentioned. We want to make sure that, you've got that on the balance sheet. We do sometimes see that that's missed out. And that's money owed to you that Amazon's holding back. So again, that should be shown as a debtor. So within the like AR sort of section of the balance sheet. And then the other side is really just the inventory, which you can get from all the inventory reports within Seller Central, checking that the units tie, making sure that you've got the right cost. So you're going to get unit numbers, but you need to make sure that you know the cost of those units. And that may change. And again, dependent on your suppliers or whether or not you manufacture it in-house. And then lastly, any kind of sales tax areas that we kind of touched on before. So those are kind of the key kind of areas to kind of look at when you're going through this. The best part of it, and Danielle mentioned earlier, is that for us, by utilizing A2X, we know that once we're confident that everything is mapped correctly, that it will seamlessly flow through into QuickBooks. And then when we get those payouts coming into the bank accounts, it's mapped correctly. So that saves so much time when we're doing that month-end close. And it also saves a lot of time when we're reconciling those individual transactions, because if you were doing it manually, you would have to record the revenue and then go through line by line by line to put all of those fees in. So it's a way of making sure everything's done a lot quicker and also kind of making sure that it's done accurately as well. So we find that by using that tool, it makes this process here, reviewing the P&L and the balance sheet, really straightforward. And it just kind of makes it a lot more efficient too. Alrighty, so obviously kind of Danielle and myself have kind of gone through best practices today. If anyone after watching this wants to kind of get in contact with us, feel free to go over to the website. There's a big contact us button on the website. We also do frequently share a lot of information, articles, webinars, and just a lot of content on the site, generally in terms of services, but also specific for e-commerce companies as well. So feel free to kind of head over, have a look, and we're always happy to help as well if anyone's got any questions.
Thanks, Emily. Brilliant. Before we move to questions and answers, you can also check out A2X at www.a2xaccounting.com or email us at contact@a2xaccounting.com if you've got any questions. We can also tell you a little bit about our partner program for accountants and bookkeepers if you're an accountant or bookkeeper. Okay, so question and answers. We've got a couple of questions so far. I think the first one we'll give to Emily, and that is, how do I track Amazon selling fees and FBA costs in QuickBooks Online?
Yeah. So the first thing is the selling fees and FP&A costs. They would be, make sure you've got it in your cost of goods sold. So we would recommend, first of all, making sure in your chart of accounts you have separate cost accounts set up for them. Amazon selling fees are very different from the FP&A costs. Because when you're looking at it and taking a step back in terms of business decisions, you want to kind of assess, for example, when you're talking about the FP&A side, does it make sense financially for us to utilize FP&A, or should we use our own warehouse? So step one, make sure that you've got the chart of accounts separately set up within the cost of goods sold section. And then for us, the best thing we do every time, utilizing A2X, like I said earlier, it really just streamlines making sure that everything flows through every time into the right chart of account code. It's so easy when you've got that giant list of expenses that Amazon charges, if you're going through and trying to do it manually, to even a lot of people lump it all together in terms of Amazon fees. Well, that doesn't help business decisions. Or people accidentally post the wrong fee to the wrong account. And do it inconsistently. So they'll map it differently one month to the other, which again, when you take a step back, doesn't help you at all either. So by utilizing A2X, it means it's going to go into the same account every single month consistently. So that's how we manage that on a sort of day-to-day basis.
Brilliant. Danielle, I'm going to give the next question to you.
Okay.
How do I handle situations where Amazon reports a different sales total than what appears in QuickBooks?
Okay, so you can have differences in your Amazon reports for a number of reasons, including, timing differences, changes in your fees and returns, the release of those reserves that we talked about earlier. So our first step would be to use, the reconciliation report that A2X has. That really helps us kind of drill down behind the scenes and see exactly where there's a mismatch. And we can say, if it makes sense, if it is a timing issue, are we going to expect it to reverse in the following month? Or is it something we need to accrue for? And then after that, just, of course, making sure all your sales have been mapped and posted. And then lastly, checking off the sales tax issues that Emily mentioned too, because, Amazon may be collecting and remitting on your behalf, but you still need to reflect that in your recorded totals.
Yeah, that new report has been a bit of a game changer on the Amazon
amazing.
side.
Yeah, it saves so much time. It's great.
Okay, all right. Well, we don't have any more questions, so I think we'll wrap up for now. I do want to say a huge thank you again to Danielle and Emily. Thank you so much for being here today and sharing your expertise with us. We really appreciate it. And if anybody does have any questions in the next few days, reach out, contact at a2xaccounting.com, and we'll try to get back to you as quickly as possible. So thank you, everyone, and have a great rest of the day.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.